Since the boost to the stock market might be limited to a very specific segment of defense and war stocks, I want to go over some of the defense and war stocks that you might want to consider buying. Hi, guys, it's Stock Curry, and Russia just attacked Poland with some missiles, and Polish civilians are dead. We're going to talk about how this is going to affect the stock market and what trades you can make, so let's get into it. Here's what happened. The day started out better than expected when Walmart reported better than expected forward guidance and the stock jumped over 9%. Then we got the PPI, which is the Producer Price Index, or an inflation measure for manufacturers, and that came in lower than expected. Those two things combined sent the stock market up almost 3%. But then we got some bad news that turned everything around. And no, it was not the fact that household debt soared at the fastest pace in 15 years and the USA is on the verge of a major recession. It was the fact that a Russian-made missile hit Poland, killing 2 civilians. Now, I'm not going to speculate about anything on this channel. I just want to give you the facts, let you make your own determination as to what might happen. And then we're going to talk about a couple of different stock market scenarios and where the stock market might go from here. We're also going to take a look at what happened right after World War II to get a little bit of a better insight as to how a major war might affect the stock market. Now, the facts that we know for sure is that a Russian-made missile struck just inside the Polish border. This was just west of Ukraine. We do know that Russia was firing a number of missiles at the time in Ukraine. Most of those hit within the Ukraine. It looks like 1 or 2 may have fallen inside Poland. It has not yet been confirmed who fired the missile, but what we do know is that a missile that was fired was made by Russia. So all signs point to Russia having fired the missile, but that has not yet been confirmed. The other thing we know is that Poland is looking to have some kind of response. They have not decided on what that response will be yet. However, they are expected to implement Article 4 of NATO on Wednesday at the Wednesday NATO meeting. Now, if you're not familiar, NATO is an alliance of countries, and the NATO Article 5 says that an attack on one nation is an attack on all nations, meaning it's very possible that because Russia attacked Poland, that all nations who are a part of NATO, including the United States, could see this as an attack on their own nation. So the fact that Russia attacked Poland is no different than if Russia had sent missiles and attacked the United States. So whatever the response is, it will be a united response. Now, let's talk about Article 4 and what that means. Article 4 essentially says that all NATO decisions are made by consensus after discussion and consultation among member countries. This means that whatever the NATO response is to Russia sending missiles into Poland, it will be a united response. Poland will not act by themselves. The United States will not act by themselves. Whatever happens, all NATO nations combined will act in agreement against Russia. When Poland says they are going to invoke Article 4, what that means is that Any member of NATO can bring any issue of concern, especially related to the security of a member country, to the table for discussion within the North Atlantic Council. In other words, Poland is going to bring the issue of this missile landing inside of their territory to the discussion table on Wednesday, meaning that on Wednesday, they are going to discuss it. That's it. We're not responding. We're not attacking. We're not sending missiles into Russia. We're not entering World War III. Poland and NATO nations are simply going to discuss this in order to determine what the appropriate response should be. Now, normally in a situation like this, where this appears to be accidental, that has not been confirmed, but it appears to be accidental, that there will be some sort of sanctions that are implemented against Russia, or there might be some very light military response. For example, NATO might send missiles into Belarus or Crimea or something, maybe a contested region of Ukraine. There's often a very light response militarily to this. Now, there is also the possibility that this causes escalation and that at some point in the next few weeks or months that we actually do enter a full-on war against Russia. And at that point, we are talking about World War III. Now, World War III would not be an easy win over. Against Russia by themselves, yes, NATO could pretty much wipe them out pretty quickly. But Russia has allies. Russia has China as their largest ally. Any war we enter, any sort of attack against Russia that brings us into a World War III type scenario is not going to be a quick victory. It will be a bloody war. Millions of lives will be lost. Civilian lives will be lost. Nuclear weapons will be used. This is not something you want. I have seen a lot of people on Twitter and Facebook calling for us to invoke Article 5 and go to war against Russia. This is not something you want. We do not want to go to war against Russia. This will be very, very bad for the entire world. It is a worst case scenario. However, it is also a possibility. So what we're going to do is look at how this affects the stock market. We're going to consider the worst case scenario first, and then we'll hope for a far better outcome. We're going to take a look at the Dow Jones Industrial Average because that is the index that we have the most amount of data for going back to World War II. In September of 1939, World War II started. At the time, the stock market was trading at around $3,200. Initially, the stock market sold off. The stock market does not like uncertainty, and wars cause a lot of uncertainty. That's why we saw the stock market sell off when Russia initially invaded Ukraine. It's also why we saw the stock market sell off when World War II started. And it's also why we saw the stock market sell off on Tuesday when news came out that these missiles had landed inside of Poland. Now, in December of 1941, the United States entered the war. And as you can see, the stock market continued to sell off for a few more months due to the uncertainty. But in April of 1942, the stock market bottomed out after falling 45% from the pre-war high. At that point, it started rising. Now, the reason the stock market started rising after the United States entered World War II is because the United States started spending a large amount of money on the war efforts. This not only had the effect of improving our GDP, it also had the effect of employing a lot of people who were still unemployed from the Great Depression. So this was really, really good for the economy. Now, if we did enter a war again, there's no guarantee that the stock market would rise in the same way that it did during World War II, because we're not coming out of a situation where the economy is incredibly terrible. In fact, the US economy for now is quite strong, even though we do have some signs that we're going to enter a major recession next year. The stock market continued to rise through the end of World War II in September of 1945. The stock market then topped out a few months later, but as the United States stopped spending money on the war effort and thousands and millions of jobs were lost because we were no longer manufacturing a large amount of goods for the war effort, the stock market started to decline. The stock market then bottomed out 1 year later after we entered another pretty deep recession in 1949. But once the Fed started kicking in and encouraging the economy to grow once again, we saw the stock market go on a massive rally. And from June of 1949 until April of 1956, the stock market rallied 174% over that 7-year period. Even if you had just bought and held from the beginning of the war through the top of the market in 1956, your portfolio would have been up over 50% during that 15-year period. So there's a couple of different things we can get out of this, given the fact that the war in Ukraine is now escalated. First of all, initially, the stock market will sell off. The stock market does not like uncertainty. And that is why I sold all of my TQQQ positions. I had originally bought those expecting to hold them through the end of December, but I sold those today because I was concerned that the stock market would sell off due to this escalation of the war in Ukraine. Now, the White House did request $37.7 billion in new Ukraine funding. So if that does go through and gets approved by Congress, that could help stimulate the stock market, because this would be more government spending, which would help boost the stock market. The only thing to keep in mind about this $37.7 billion spending is that this would mostly help defense stocks, not the stock market as a whole. Since the boost to the stock market might be limited to a very specific segment of defense and war stocks, I want to go over some of the defense and war stocks that you might want to consider buying. I let the Discord know about these earlier today, so let me let you know about them now. The first one is DFEN. This is a 3 times leveraged bull ETF of the aerospace and defense sector. This ETF should rise as more and more money is spent on the war effort and fighting Russia. And that should go up whether we send money to Ukraine or whether we actually enter the war through NATO. This ETF should rise. Now, there are also a number of individual stocks that you might want to consider, and those include LMT, which is Lockheed Martin, BA, which is Boeing, NOC, which is Northrop Grumman, GD, which is General Dynamics, RTX, Raytheon Technologies, LDOS, Leidos Holdings, LHX, L3 Harris, HII, Huntington Ingalls, and CACI, which is CACI. Now, if you don't feel comfortable putting your money into war stocks because of ethical reasons, I completely understand. In that case, you might want to consider either steel stocks or oil stocks, which should both rise as this war in Ukraine and Russia starts to escalate. Now, we've talked about the worst case scenario. Let's just talk for a minute about a far better case scenario, which would be if we don't do any military action and we simply just do more sanctions and choke this up to an accident, a one-off that will hopefully never happen again. In that scenario, we can expect everything to kind of blow over. We can expect the defense stocks to start to come back down, and we can expect the stock market to restart its rally going through the end of December. So I am going to be watching this very carefully. For now, I am in DFEN. I put quite a bit of money into that today. However, if this blows over and on Wednesday or Thursday, we get an announcement from NATO that they are not going to take military action, then I plan to sell my DFEN and rebuy TQQQ. If you want to follow along with everything that I'm buying and selling, and you want to know how to make money as the market goes down, as well as how to make money as the market goes up, I encourage you to come join my coaching program where I will teach you how to trade options, specifically multi-leg options and the more complicated vertical spreads and iron condors, and all of the different ways where you can make money no matter whether the stock market goes up or down. You can make money either way. So if you want to learn how to trade the more complicated options, I encourage you to join our coaching program. You can set up a call with one of my onboarding specialists who will explain the entire program to you, and you can see if this is a good fit for you or not. You can contact an onboarding specialist at weprofitdayandnight.com. That's weprofitdayandnight.com. If you got a lot out of this video and this helped you understand what's going on and how to trade the current environment that we're in, be a good friend and share this video with your friends and family so that they will know what's going on as well. And make sure to hit the like button and subscribe. If you want to know more about what's going on in the crypto world, I encourage you to watch the last video that I uploaded here.